39 soldiers now detained on suspicion of involvement. Yildirim speaking outside his palace in Ankara and flanked by top general Hulusi Akar, who was held during the attempt, also described the putsch bid as a black stain on Turkish democracy. He added that 1,440 people were wounded.
Forces loyal to the Turkish government fought on Saturday to crush the remnants of a military coup attempt, which crumbled after crowds answered President Tayyip Erdogan's call to take to the streets and dozens of rebels abandoned their tanks. More than 104 people were killed in violence that erupted late on Friday after a faction of the armed forces attempted to seize power using tanks and attack helicopters. Erdogan appeared to accuse the coup plotters of trying to kill him and promised to purge the armed forces, which in the past have staged a number of successful coups. Officials said Turkish authorities have already detained around 1,500 members of the armed forces. A senior official said chief of staff, who has been reported held hostage by the rebels, has been rescued. Addressing a crowd of thousands of flag-waving supporters at Ataturk airport, Erdogan said it remained at helm, although disturbances continued in Ankara. Turkish authorities have detained 1,563 military personnel across the country. A successful overthrow of Erdogan, who has ruled Turkey since 2003, would have marked one of the biggest shifts in the Middle East in years, transforming a major U.S. ally while war rages on its border. However, a failed coup attempt could still destabilize a NATO member that lies between the European Union and the chaos of Syria, with Daesh bombings targeting Turkish cities and the government also at war with Kurdish separatists.
Being joined now over the phone by Dr. Ibrahim Al-Ghazawi, political analyst, about how he sees the situation in Turkey. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Ibrahim, let me start off with your overall impressions of how the events unfolded in Turkey.
Well, let me start with the necessary word about the environment when the coup trials happen. In the beginning, I would say that this is not new. In the recent history of political life in Turkey, the coups have been always existing there because of the simple fact that the military presence in the political life in Turkey is always very strong. And at the last 14 years of development and Freedom Party control of the power in Turkey, of course, more steps have been taken by them to alienate or take away the military from the political life. And they managed also to do this even via the constitution of Turkey.
Right.
But we still have to remember that the recent history of Turkey, the coup itself as an idea and practice is not out of the normal track of political life there. But when it happened suddenly yesterday at night, it reminded us of several trials before, and probably this time the situation is different. And the surrounding environment with Turkey regionally is very tense. They have Syria, they have Iraq, and then they have, of course, the tense relation with some regional powers. And so all of this probably has escalated or aggravated the effect of such a trial to make a coup d'etat.
Right. But the fact also that none of the soldiers involved, as we understand, were high-ranking officers in the army, do you think that that affected the whole process?
Excuse me, I can't read you well.
The fact that none of the people or the soldiers involved in the attempt to overthrow the government were actually high-ranking officers, do you think that that made a difference?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
Well,
hello?
I'm going to have to end it there. I do apologize to our viewers for the bad reception on that phone call. Carrying on, though, with our news and thanking Dr. Ibrahim Al-Ghazawi, political analyst, for his time, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed that those responsible will pay a heavy price for their treason to Turkey after forces loyal to him quashed an attempt to overthrow his government in a night of explosions, air battles, gunfire that left dozens of people dead. Authorities say thousands of people were also arrested. Erdogan was on a seaside vacation when tanks moved into the streets of Ankara and Istanbul but flew home early Saturday. General Umit Dündar, the newly appointed acting chief of the General Staff, said officers from the Air Force, the military police and the armored units were mainly involved in the attempt. The uprising appears not to have been backed by the most senior ranks of the military, and Turkey's main opposition parties quickly condemned the attempted overthrow of the government. But the military did not appear unified as top commanders went on television to condemn the action and ordered troops back to their barracks. Meanwhile, world leaders urged respect for democratic institutions in key NATO member and European neighbor Turkey. The United States, Russia, NATO and the European Union appealed for stability. UN Chief Ban Ki-moon lashed out against the attempted putsch as he called for civilian rule to be maintained. EU chiefs Donald Tusk and Jean-Claude Juncker backed Erdogan's government and urged a swift return to normal. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters that Moscow was deeply concerned about the situation, with Russian President Vladimir Putin being kept up to date by the Foreign Ministry and intelligence services. The French Foreign Ministry, meanwhile, called for the avoidance of violence and respect for democratic order in an appeal that was echoed by German Chancellor Angela Merkel. In related news, government sources said that the country will examine the request for political asylum by 8 Turkish soldiers who fled to Greece in a helicopter earlier on Saturday. Greece arrested the men after they landed in the northern Greek city. One of the officials said that they are due to appear before a Greek prosecutor on Sunday. The sources said the Black Hawk helicopter the soldiers fled in will be returned to Turkey immediately. Turkish maritime authorities have reopened Istanbul's Bosphorus Strait to transiting tankers after shutting it earlier today for several hours, following what the government said was an attempt against the government by a faction in the military. The Bosphorus is one of the world's most important choke points for the maritime transit of oil, with over 3% of global supply, mainly from Russia and the Sea, passing through the 17-mile waterway that connects the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. It also ships vast amounts of grains from Russia and Kazakhstan to world markets. On Saturday, forces loyal to the Turkish government fought to crush the remnants of a military attempt following violence and clashes in Ankara and Istanbul. Shipping agent GAC said traffic had reopened after being shut for several hours for security reasons, and ships were now being able to travel again through the Bosphorus, which divides Istanbul into European and Asian sides. In another top story, the Daesh terrorist group has claimed that the Tunisian man who barreled his truck into a crowd in the French resort city of Nice was what they termed a soldier of the group. This is the first claim of responsibility for the attack that has claimed the lives of 84 people and wounded more than 200 others.
France began a period of national mourning for the 84 people killed when a Tunisian man rammed a truck into a crowd in Nice. Daesh terrorist group claimed responsibility for the truck attack in Nice on France National Day. Daesh said that one of its soldiers carried out Thursday carnage in response to calls to target nations of coalition states that are fighting them. President François Hollande said the country would observe 3 days of mourning as he warned the death toll could rise further, with more than 50 people still fighting for their lives. Hollande, who was due to meet his security chiefs on Saturday in the country, would observe a minute of silence at midday. Meanwhile, French police arrested 3 people in Nice in connection with the probe into the Bastille Day attack. The driver's wife is also still being held by police. The massacre, which comes after 2 major terror attacks in France in 2015, has once again shaken the country to its core, raising questions over intelligence and security failings and how to stop such unsophisticated yet deadly assaults.
And to speak to us a little bit about what's been happening in France, Ambassador Galel Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, joins us now over the phone. Thank you very much for your time. Ambassador Galel?
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on Panorama News. Mr. Ambassador...
Sorry, I can't hear you well.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, what's the question?
Okay, the question is, how do you view the fact that Daesh has claimed responsibility for the attack in Nice?
No, I can't hear.
Okay, my apologies to you. We're having technical problems and we'll be moving on with our news. Ambassador Galel Bayoumi, former assistant to the foreign minister, thank you very much. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, meanwhile, or earlier rather, held a phone call with his French counterpart François Hollande in which he strongly condemned the Nice attack. Sisi offered his condolences to the French president, the French government and the people of France. The president stressed that Egypt stands in solidarity with the people of France during these difficult times and with the international efforts fighting terrorism. The Foreign Ministry also denounced the bloodshed in Nice. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Dr. Ahmed al-Tayyib, condemned the deadly attack, stressing that terrorist attacks contradicted Islam and urged the world to unite efforts to defeat terrorism and rid the world of its evil. Mufti of the Republic, Dr. Shawki Alam, also condemned the assailant, describing him as an extremist who follows in the footsteps of the devil, adding that Islam does not call for bloodshed. For his part, Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait also denounced the terrorist attack which killed dozens of innocent people. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is expected in the Rwandan capital Kigali today. The president will participate in the 27th round of the African Union Summit scheduled to begin on the 17th and the 18th of July. Presidential spokesman Alet Yousef said that the president's participation comes in light of Egypt's keenness on enhancing joint African work and strengthening its relations with all African countries. Yousef added that President al-Sisi starts his activities on Saturday, where he will hold a number of meetings with African leaders. Moving on, air raids on rebel-held districts of Syria's battleground second city of Aleppo have killed 19 civilians, including children. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 11 civilians, including 4 children, were killed by air raids up night in the Bab al-Nasr area of Old Aleppo, and 7 others were killed in Firdaus neighborhood. The observatory warned that the toll could rise due to the number of critically wounded, adding that rebel fighters shelled government-controlled western areas of Aleppo but had no immediate word on any casualties.